Yeah.
You're not honest just because you declare a 100 million rand gift or because a 50,000 rand gift. It can't end there.
And I'm sure you will have seen the political commentary that says the knives are out for Paul MASHATILE. In its extreme iteration, it will say WMC is panicking around the prospect of MASHATILE rising to the presidency. Therefore, expect all of these.
Yes, that must be scrutinized because you can't use your positions of public power to benefit privately. So it cannot end here. We have to know exactly where the money comes from for these properties, why they're being gifted to the president, are there expectations?
Guys, so you see this whole issue with how far we should blame white monopoly capital in trying to ascertain the level of wrong that is actually going on among many probably non-whites in South Africa. It's one of the things that fascinates me a lot about South Africa's politics and democracy. So in other words, if a non-white probably is caught in a crime or is caught actually doing something wrong, how far could we blame or ascertain a blame on white monopoly capital in trying to silence that voice, especially if this is a prominent black voice in South Africa? And I think this is actually what the debate around Paul MASHATILE's rise actually seems to be rearing in South Africa, right? So recently, Paul MASHATILE actually didn't have a really good, I think this was a really terrible weekend. He was actually fined for failing to declare a diamond gift that was received from this really controversial figure in South Africa, Louis Liebenberg, who is actually described as a philanthropist and all of that. But there's really a lot of dark, shady things that actually I've seen on the internet. I'm yet to do my own research anyway. But this Louis Liebenberg gifted diamond to Paul MASHATILE's wife, which the parliament, especially according to the parliamentary ethics in South Africa, expected to have been declared by the presidency or the vice president. In other words, this is a gift I got from so and so, and that and that. But he failed to do that, and he has recently been fined. Now, in trying to really understand why and how, if it's a problem, is there a problem? If probably I become a politician tomorrow, maybe in South Africa, for example, is there a problem with my wife receiving a gift from somebody and all of that? That's the debate now that's actually taking place in this really heated argument between this news anchor and this Professor Alex van den Hever. He's actually from the Wits School of Governance. And actually, it was a debate also with the chairperson of the Joint Committee of Ethics and the members in parliament, right, from the DA party. This has actually been cooking anyway, but there's this figure, Louis Liebenberg, who is a controversial figure. I think many articles have called him a philanthropist and all of that, but he gifted the wife of the vice president, Paul MASHATILE, diamond, to which I think, according to the parliamentary ethics in South Africa, that gift was to have been declared since it was being gifted to a public representative in South Africa and all of that. But the vice president failed to declare that gift, and as a result, it has been a really big issue in parliament to the point where he has recently been fined, and I'm sure that would actually probably have some consequence in his move towards a presidency going forward. In fact, I see a lot of liberals in South Africa and people who actually support this liberal, non-leftist supporters anyway in South Africa are really worried about the MASHATILE rise. I saw this video on National Security News that was titled "MASHATILE's Rise Would Be a Presidency Poised to Empower Crime Cartels and Deepen Corruption." I will actually make that video. It's actually from this guy called Dr. Piers Krukamp, all right? I think he exposed a lot in that video. I'm going to take my time to really analyze that video soon. But anyway, the Paul MASHATILE prospect of being a president, even I think I've heard Helen Zille actually argue that he actually would likely favor the MK party, EFF, the left wing, and probably effectively move South Africa to the left side of the political spectrum. So this is the kind of like halo that's actually hovering around this candidate, Paul MASHATILE. But in this debate anyway, this news anchor and the professor from the Wits School of Governance, we're really trying to really understand how far it is that we have to constantly call on white monopoly capital, proponents of white monopoly capital, I mean critics of white monopoly capital, how far must they go in trying to really silence what probably could actually or should accrue to a possible to an event that should be met out with justice and all of that, but at the end of the day really blamed with the fear of what he calls WMC, white monopoly capital. And this professor here really, I think he had a really interesting response to this question, because I don't want to spill the beans, but I think it's a really interesting debate that we all should watch, because it speaks to a lot of things, a lot of things going wrong, probably maybe by ANC members, but maybe from black people in South Africa, black entrepreneurs and all of that. I saw today that the Daily Maverick has actually called they've exposed the name of this big businessman in South Africa who was affiliated to the Tebogo, the IDT CEO, Tebogo Malaka's case of the inflation of the oxygen plant's tender. And this person, this businessman, as it were, I actually had to do a small research on the foundation he managed. It's really instrumental foundation in South Africa, actually employing people who are jobless and all of that, and helping to give out jobs to these really disenfranchised, disadvantaged people in South African society. But at the end of the day, the investigation from Daily Maverick proves that the guy hasn't even been paying these workers. In other words, these guys who have been struggling with the high unemployment rate in South Africa, the ones who have decided to come out to probably give a service, they even haven't been paid. And all of this money we see wrapped in a scandal of an inflation rise, a tender inflation rise, but also the Daily Maverick article, I'll post it on the show notes here anyway. It speaks about how this foundation from this businessman, I'll be making a video on that anyway. The money from the foundation was used to sponsor the IDT CEO's, I think real estate project. Just a mess, bro. It's just a total mess. All right. So at the end of the day, when we try to really probably find a way to ascertain justice for this kind of case, we see critics of white monopoly capital or proponents of the white monopoly capital, so to speak, and that whole side of things coming for probably people, especially maybe white South Africans, for example, Indian South Africans, or maybe even colored South Africans, arguing that this is white monopolist capital that is scared of a black rise or black ascendancy, so to speak. So this is a really tricky debate, and that's one of the things this interview really highlights. I think it's really important that we all listen to the end. Really interesting on what would be done, in trying to prosecute this. I don't know if it's a crime now by the Vice President Paul Mashatile, but actually it appears that the DA still has plans to go ahead in trying to take this issue to its logical conclusions on the fact that the Vice President of the Republic of South Africa failed to declare a diamond gift that was gifted to his wife by a controversial figure by name Louis Liebenberg, and this actually created a lot of dust going forward in South Africa. Let's quickly listen to the debate. Really tight, really intense, and share your thoughts, guys, in the comments.
What's wrong with the wife of the deputy president receiving a diamond from, I don't know, someone, either an associate, a friend, or someone they know?
Well, anybody who is in a position of public power or public authority, there is a risk that they will essentially abuse that public authority for private gain. And this can involve kickbacks. This can involve people who pay the person in that position of public power to do something for them. Mm-hmm. And here we see a case of a person, Louis Liebenberg, who has clearly tried to benefit in the past from relationships with the state, giving a gift that is very unusual. You don't hear normally about people giving wives of somebody a diamond ring. It doesn't make sense. So the risk is that there's a quid pro quo, and that establishes a conflict of interest. And this might happen with all the gifts, and that's why there's first of all a requirement for transparency, so that we can see who's receiving these gifts. But it shouldn't end there.
Yeah,
it should actually go to the examination of whether or not there were any quid pro quos.
Yeah. So this comes amid, the declaration season, and I was saying that it always makes for fascinating reading. There's quite a number, and usually it's people declaring, as we show our viewers on screen right now, that's some of what the Deputy President has declared. And I was saying earlier on that this could not have come at a worse time for the Deputy President, right? In that it compounds scrutiny that was already there around the two properties. What have you made of his explanations with regard to those two properties? His simple explanation is to say, I don't own those properties, despite them being listed under ownership in property and land. They are owned by my son-in-law and my son, and I just merely reside in them because they are family homes. Is that good enough?
No, not at all. First of all, they're gifts, in that he's using these very, very expensive properties from relatives, and relatives who appear to have accumulated their wealth from government contracts, particularly within the Gauteng government, where the Deputy President has considerable influence and has had considerable influence. So this raises all sorts of issues, again, around what's going on. But we've also seen recently that there's relationships that appear to extend from people like Kat Matlala and Sodi, social occasions where the Deputy President was meant to be present, members of the provincial government in Gauteng were present, and these are people who are benefiting from state contracts illicitly, currently in prison under with criminal charges, which raise enormous questions about what's really going on here. So it cannot end here. We have to know exactly where the money comes from for these properties, why they're being gifted to the president. Are there expectations of quid pro quos, or are these the quid pro quos? We would need to know, but it doesn't spell right, and it's very wrong when you've got somebody in the position who could become president of South Africa in receiving gifts of this nature.
Do we risk focusing on one individual when there's actually all of this, and the number was corrected, I said 400, and I was just counting for the National Assembly, but also we have members of the National Council of Provinces who also make declarations that also equally should be subject to scrutiny. And when you do scrutinize, a lot of the times they are quite revealing. I mean, for instance, the Minister of Finance declared an interest in a company that has shares in a mine that was scheduled to benefit from an investment by the UIF, a pumping in of money. And I'm not so clear about the rest of the details, but those facts are on the table that say UIF wanted to put money in this mine. The Minister of Finance has some kind of an interest. So this is my long way of asking you, do we subject all the other MPs to equal scrutiny, or indeed Paul Mashatile is being singled out here?
I think Paul Mashatile is given a lot of prominence because he could be president and he's in a position of power. Now note that this is a parliamentary disclosure process. It isn't one for the executive of government. But in fact, the people in the executive of government are the ones who actually hold direct power in many cases and direct influence. And it's an indirect way of finding out what's going on. But yes, the Minister of Finance having that kind of interest, it's also coming through the parliamentary process, is highly problematic and should be fully investigated. Because again, the Minister of Finance is in a position of significant power over the PIC, over the structures that are investing the assets of the UIF and the compensation fund and the government employees pension fund.
Yeah.
So yes, that must be scrutinized, because you can't use your positions of public power to benefit privately. And that's potentially what's happening here. So just note, when somebody hasn't properly disclosed as Parliament and a little penalty is put on them, that's only one particular sanction. The issue is what should happen when you discover members of the executive with massive conflicts of interest, and how should that be investigated? We are probably not investigating sufficiently. And but the systemic risk to South Africa of having a corrupt president or having a corrupt Minister of Finance are severe.
Yeah.
And we've seen this in the past. So we have to avoid it, prevent it, and where we discover it, eliminate it as fast as possible. If that doesn't happen, we have SARS that gets captured because they don't want tax disclosures for the president or anybody associated with them. We have public agencies that are enormously important being captured. We have the PIC with 2.8 trillion rands worth of investments that can significantly impact on the country, and all of those people are in positions of concentrated power. You cannot just leave even the disclosure where it is. You have to go further than the disclosure. For
completion, I do need to reflect that as far as I could read the reporting on that issue around the finance minister, the Minister of Labour, Nomakosazana Ahmed, did intervene, and in a way I think that investment was stopped. Prof, should this be the end of the matter as far as this diamond gift is concerned? 10,000 rand fine as well as a reprimand in Parliament?
No, I think that what we have to do, the purpose of the disclosure is not for the matter to end there, because then I can declare, 100 million rand gift that I've just received, and it's okay, I've declared it. I don't even get a 10,000 rand fine. The question is whether the fine should be some proportion or all of the value of the gift itself. Then it actually becomes material. On the other hand, you have to look at whether or not there are conflicts of interest that have arisen and why the gift was provided. Are there quid pro quos? That must be investigated. This has to be an entry point into further action. That's the purpose of a disclosure, because you now know what has happened. It doesn't end there, and it doesn't end the conflict of interest just because you declared it. You're not honest just because you declare a 100 million rand gift or because a 50,000 rand gift. It can't end there.
And I'm sure you will have seen the political commentary that says the knives are out for Paul Mashatile. In its extreme iteration, it will say WMC is panicking around the prospect of Mashatile rising to the presidency, therefore expect all of these to come up. Does that answer the questions of probity that are being asked, or do we back away and say you're playing into the hands of what could potentially be an agenda against the political rise of this ANC leader?
Well, the issue is, has he been behaving improperly? That's got nothing to do with white monopoly capital. The issue is, if he's done this, if there are quid pro quos, if there is corruption, it must be investigated, and it should be investigated whoever does it. So the fact is that there's an appearance of major conflicts of interest that don't have proper answers behind them. He's got to answer to them. And the rest is basically just obfuscation and diversion.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time.